Earth Systems 3209, Unit 1, Introduction to Earth Science, the Evolution of Planet Earth. Text references include Chapter 1, Chapter 17, and Appendix A. Unit 1, Topic 3.1, focuses on the Earth's spheres. In this presentation, we will focus on identifying and explaining how Earth is a dynamic planet. We'll focus on highlighting the systems approach to Earth systems by recognizing Earth is made up of 4 spheres. And we'll also focus on an example of how Earth's spheres are interconnected as one complete system. And our focus will concentrate on the water cycle. The Earth's spheres. The Earth is a system of 4 independent reservoirs through which matter and energy can flow. These 4 reservoirs include, number 1, the geosphere, 2, the hydrosphere, 3, the atmosphere, and 4, the biosphere. For information on this topic, you can see a text reference on pages 12 through 14. The Earth system is powered by 2 main sources of energy. Number 1 being the solar energy from the sun. This drives the external processes of Earth. For example, weather and climate, ocean circulation, and erosional processes are all driven by energy, which starts with the sun. Residual heat and radioactivity is internal energy which drives the internal processes of Earth. For example, volcanoes, earthquakes, and mountain building. When we look at the geosphere is the entire solid portion of the Earth that extends from the inner core to the surface of the Earth. So it encompasses the whole solid Earth. So basically, the geosphere is anything that is not the hydrosphere, the atmosphere, or the biosphere. Some examples that we see include our continental crust and the ocean crust. The hydrosphere is all of the water on the Earth, including both surface and subsurface waters, including ice. Examples of the hydrosphere include oceans, glaciers, lakes, rivers, and groundwater. The atmosphere is the gaseous layer which surrounds Earth. It is mainly comprised of nitrogen, 78%, and oxygen, approximately 21%. And you can also find other trace gases including carbon dioxide, argon, etc. So an example of the atmosphere will be the air that we breathe. And lastly, the 4th sphere includes the biosphere. This is the layer of life existing throughout the other 3 preceding spheres. That would be the geosphere, the hydrosphere, and the atmosphere. Examples of the biosphere include plants, animals, birds, fish, etc. When we look at the formation of the 4 spheres, and the 4 spheres are interconnected very closely, we see that the order in which the spheres formed in geologic history would include the geosphere forming first. As the geosphere segregated, volcanic outgassing released gases from inside the Earth. This formed the atmosphere. One of the main gases in the atmosphere was water vapor. And once the Earth's temperature cooled below 100 degrees Celsius, the water vapor in the atmosphere condensed, and great rains commenced falling upon the Earth's surface, which formed the hydrosphere. And once you had those 3 spheres established, life began in the oceans, and that would mark the beginning of the biosphere. When we look at the 4 spheres, the geosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere, all 4 of these spheres are interconnected. Earth is viewed as a complex system made up of a number of other systems which interconnect and interact with one another to form new, larger scale systems. In the diagram to the right, you can notice the arrows. And the arrows between the systems will indicate how closely they're connected. The hydrosphere is connected to the atmosphere. The atmosphere, in turn, is connected to the hydrosphere. The atmosphere is also connected to the geosphere. Geosphere is connected to the atmosphere. Hydrosphere closely connected to the geosphere. And the geosphere is closely connected to the hydrosphere. The biosphere would show connections to all three of these spheres. And these arrows indicate the closely interconnection of all four spheres. When you look at the interconnection of all four spheres, we will now go and look at the water cycle and see how the water cycle shows how all four spheres are connected. The water cycle shows an interconnection or an interaction of Earth's spheres as water moves from the ground and organisms into the atmosphere. The water cycle focuses on four main components. One being evaporation, number two being condensation, number three being precipitation, and number four, runoff. Note that this example incorporates all four spheres. If you look at water, which is part of the hydrosphere, we can see that the first step in the water cycle is evaporation, and water from the hydrosphere will evaporate and move into the atmosphere. Once in the atmosphere, it is a gas which will later condense. Once condensation occurs, the rain in water form can either fall back to the hydrosphere, it could fall back to the geosphere, where it is then stored upon the surface of the Earth. Once the water is on the surface of the Earth, water can be taken in by animals and plants in the biosphere. Also, animals and plants can get their water from groundwater that's located in the geosphere. All life on Earth can give off water vapor. Animals and plants perspire and transpire, in which water can be released back to the atmosphere, or it can be released to the geosphere, or even to the hydrosphere. Once water is on the surface of the Earth, the water can have a huge influence on the solid Earth. As moving water over the solid Earth will show erosion and weathering. And also, water that's in the solid Earth can move back to the hydrosphere by rivers or groundwater. The geosphere can also evaporate water from the groundwater, which will then move into the atmosphere. So as we see here, the water cycle itself is closely related to all four spheres as the water moves between the geosphere, the hydrosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere. Let's have a look at example number 1. Example number 1 states, in what way would volcanic activity affect the Earth's spheres? So volcanic activity would be included in the geosphere, whereas lava and magma beneath the Earth's surface can erupt to the Earth's surface. Once you have a volcanic eruption, volcanic eruptions can interfere with surface drainage patterns. They can block off rivers, they can interfere with lakes, and they can interfere with the water moving over to your surface. You can also see volcanic eruptions can interfere with the incoming solar radiation in the atmosphere, thus change weather and climate, short-term and long-term changes. One such example happened in Iceland 2 to 3 years ago when the shield volcano of Iceland started to erupt. all the volcanic ash was blown into the atmosphere, and that interfered with travel of airplanes, and also interfered with incoming solar radiation. But that was on a short-term basis. Volcanic eruptions can also interfere with the biosphere. Volcanic eruptions can destroy crops, plants. Okay, without the plants, the ecosystem will be affected, and food webs will be affected in certain areas. Lastly, volcanic eruptions can cause volcanic ash to stay in the atmosphere for years, blocking sunlight that is necessary for life on Earth, which in turn may also cause food webs to be affected. And if the volcanic eruptions are wide-ranged and spread throughout the world, they could cause food webs to collapse over time. This is one piece of evidence that could possibly explain extinctions in the past. Example number 2. Which sphere includes groundwater? So if we look at these 4 spheres, atmosphere, with the prefix atmo meaning gas, refers to the gaseous sphere, which is the sphere that surrounds the Earth. Geosphere, geo standing for solid Earth, would be the sphere that includes all solid rock. Biosphere, bio standing for life, is the sphere of life which exists in all the other 3 spheres. And choice D will be hydro. Hydro meaning water will be the water sphere of Earth. So if you're looking at which sphere includes groundwater, your answer will be D, the hydrosphere. Your turn. Take the time to complete the following questions. Solutions will follow on the following slides. So you can stop your recording now and answer the following question. Explain how the interaction between the hydrosphere and the lithosphere includes landscapes. The solution to this problem, explain how the interaction between the hydrosphere and the lithosphere influences landscapes, will focus on the properties of the lithosphere and the hydrosphere and how they interact with one another. The hydrosphere is the water portion of Earth, which consists of both solid water, as ice, and liquid water. Landscape features, for the most part, are the result of ice, which in the form of glaciers, and moving water in the form of rivers and groundwater, and on the shorelines you can have moving water in the form of waves. All of these agents erode and weather Earth's surface. As a result, ice and water moves over and through the lithosphere, and Earth's surface is shaped by the erosive forces, and they result in uneven, scenic landscape features, such as glacial valleys, cirques, eskers, river valleys, sea stacks, etc. So the erosive nature of both solid water and liquid water over the Earth's surface is one of the forces that affect and influence surface landscape features. In summary, overview of the points that we covered in this slideshow. Earth is a complex system made up of 4 spheres that are closely connected together. These include the geosphere, which includes solid Earth, the atmosphere, which includes the gaseous Earth, the hydrosphere, which includes the liquid Earth, and the biosphere, which includes the living Earth. All 4 of these spheres are closely interconnected, and a change in one sphere could affect a change in another sphere.